Check, check, mic check. Check, check, mic check. Welcome to Podcast Envy. I'm your podcast boss, Andrea Klunder, and it has been a little while since I have been here with you. But as I stated in my last episode, I have not ghosted you. I am here. I am 7 weeks out from the surgery that I mentioned previously that took me out for a while. But I was not out completely because here I am. I made it and am still making it and am still in recovery. 4 to 6 weeks is a lie, let me tell you, sort of a lie. But here I am. I've been working behind the scenes on a lot of content for clients such as Key Change, creating opera for all voices with the Santa Fe Opera, with a new podcast called How's Business coming out in May from the Institute for Justice Clinic on Entrepreneurship, and on Power Your Story, the podcast produced by students in my high school mentoring program. We have a lot of good stuff that's going to be posting soon. I've been very behind, like almost a year behind on posting episodes for that show, but we're getting caught up. I promise it's going to be awesome. But today's Podcast Envy episode is not about me, and it is not about my clients. It is about you. Isn't that your favorite topic? It is about you, the indie podcaster who may or may not be paying attention to all the magical, mysterious, confusing, exciting things that are happening in the industry. So one thing that I think is really important in my role as a podcast producer, consultant, coach, editor, is to make sure that I am keeping up with what is going on in our industry. Because let's face it, not all of my clients are full-time podcasters, and not all of them have the time to be listening to industry podcasts, reading blog posts, getting e-newsletters, joining Facebook groups. It's a lot. And honestly, in the last 4 to 6 months, it's been a lot more than usual happening in this space. And so what am I talking about? Perhaps you have heard that Spotify has recently spent upwards of $2, $3, $4, maybe $500 million. Wait, what? Yes? $500 million acquiring various podcast companies, including Gimlet Media, helmed by Alex Blumberg, formerly of NPR, including Anchor, which is a free podcast hosting company that I don't usually recommend, still don't recommend for people starting and launching their podcasts, but apparently Spotify saw something in that company, and some other companies as well. But those were like the two big ones that got a lot of attention. Also, recently in the news, there has been a lot going on with a new app and service called Luminary. And, well, the Luminary thing is a little bit confusing. So it's a new podcast app on which you can listen to all your favorite podcasts. Scratch that, most of your favorite podcasts. More on that in a moment. Whereby you can pay a monthly fee, $7.99, presently, I believe, to subscribe to Luminary exclusive podcasts, many of which are hosted by celebs like Lena Dunham and Trevor Noah, or are podcasts that have been around for a while, either independently produced or on a network like, let's say, WNYC Studios, that have a huge following that are being scooped up by Luminary with the promise of being able to get paid for the podcasts that they make without having to have sponsors and ads. And listeners who subscribe for the $7.99 per month to get these podcasts will have exclusive access to these shows and won't have to listen to ads. All the other shows will be available on Luminary on the free side of the app, but with ads. Oh, except a whole bunch of podcasters, and not just independent podcasters, but big networks, have decided to pull their shows off of the Luminary free app because, well, that's where it gets a little muddy. Anyways, this is not an industry news podcast, there are plenty of other podcasts that you could listen to that give you all this kind of information. Two that I am going to recommend are two that I listen to. One is She Podcasts with Jessica Kupferman and Elsie Escobar, and one is Libsyn's The Feed with Rob Walsh and Elsie Escobar. Both of those shows do a great job of covering stuff that's going on in the industry, opinions, point of view, perspective, etc. So check those out, or subscribe to an e-newsletter that I find is really good at providing this kind of information in a short, digestible, but thorough way, which is Pod News. And I will be linking to all of these resources, of course, in the show notes for this episode at thecreativeimposter.com/PodEnvy043 for episode 43. That's thecreativeimposter.com/PodEnvy043, or in the description of whichever app that you are using to listen to this, unless it is an app that doesn't support hyperlinks. One of the reasons everyone was pulling their shows off of Luminary. But anyway, I'll let you go look that up for yourself. What this is a show about is about the craft of podcasting. And everyone's all a Twitter about all this money being poured into podcasting and these companies that are coming out of the woodwork and trying to figure out how to monetize the podcasting industry in a better way and how they can get their share of the pie and what to do with this still somewhat small but very quickly growing audience of podcast listeners. What to do with the medium. And all of us indie podcasters are like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Oh my gosh, podcasting is blowing up. Oh my gosh, should my show be on Luminary? Oh my gosh, what's happening with Spotify? Where are the opportunities? What's going to happen? What's Apple going to do? Here's this diversity program over here with Google and PRX. Here's this diversity program over here with Spotify. Here's this money for podcasting and this money for podcasting. And oh my gosh, I don't have a podcast, but it seems like everyone who matters has a podcast. I need to have a podcast. Let me see how I can copy every other podcast that's out there and make it sound like NPR quality and hire people to help me, but not pay them very much because I have a tiny budget, but I want my show to sound like I have an NPR size budget. I don't even know if you followed that. I barely did. Oh, it's Podcast Angel time to recommend to you Libsyn's hosting services. If you have not yet launched your show and you're confused about where the audio files go or who is the best host for you or why should I pay for hosting when there are free hosts, head scratch. There's an episode earlier in the Podcast Envy archives all about that. I 100% wholeheartedly recommend Libsyn's hosting services. Totally affordable, totally reliable, and there are so many benefits and perks to working with Libsyn that you cannot get anywhere else that I just cannot come up with a reason not to host with them. You can, of course, find a link for Libsyn's hosting services in the show notes for this episode. And don't forget, when you do sign up for hosting services with Libsyn, you will want to use the promo code ENVY, that's ENVY, to get a free month. And then they will know that I referred you, and then they will send me a wee little check to say thanks. The thing is that there's a lot of buzz, and often I think the buzz is distracting. I think it doesn't really matter. I think for you, the indie podcaster, and of course I could be proven wrong, but I think for you and for me and for most of us, not a lot is really going to change for us, and not all that quickly as a result of all of this stuff. I think it's a good idea to know what's going on, and I think it's a good idea to be aware of it. I do not think that some of these promises of fame and fortune and monetization and sponsorship will be suddenly easy for those of us who are making podcasts in our basement, closet, home office, car, etc., etc. I do not think that it means that there's this giant piece of the podcast fortune pie that we will suddenly be able to easily tap into. I think it's distracting. I think it's blinky lights and shiny sequins, and that you and I are best served right now by doing what it is we do best, focusing on our listeners, focusing on community, focusing on good quality content. Nope, focusing on outstanding quality content that matters to our listeners, that matters to our community, that makes a difference, that says something. We don't need to be the next podcast sensation. We don't need to sound like NPR. We don't need to be making hundreds of thousands of dollars off of podcasting like Entrepreneurs on Fire to be relevant and to matter. And if you are in podcasting because you want to do something that matters, because you want to connect with people, because you want to create something that has a positive impact in the world, or even on a smaller scale to a group of people or a community, because you have something to say, and this is one of the most incredible platforms out there with which to say it and with which people can hear it. If that's why you're in podcasting, I mean, sure, pay attention to the news, get excited that things are happening and people are paying attention to podcasting, but don't get distracted. If you're in it for fame and fortune and money, you're in the wrong place. There are way easier ways to do this. And I know people are like, oh, it's going to be like the next YouTube. And look at all these YouTubers who made a ton of money off the platform because they got in early and found the secret formula. And well, YouTubers are leaving the platform in droves because it got saturated and YouTube changed their terms of service. And now it's harder to make money off that ad revenue. And I mean, these things just go in waves. Again, I could be wrong, but I think right now it's time to focus. Focus. What do you have to say? What can you do that makes a difference? How can you get the word out to your people, to your community about your show, and invite them in to what it is that you're creating, what it is that you're doing? No blinky lights, flashing signs, and pockets full of glittery fairy dust needed. So how do you do that? How do you know if what you have to say is important? How do you know if your show is making a difference? How do you stay focused and stay connected on what really matters, especially when it seems like there's all this growth and people skyrocketing to the top of success with their podcast, and you look at your download numbers and it just doesn't seem to match the hype? Well, I have a solution for you. Maybe. I was talking about it in the past before surgery happened, and it was going to start in January of 2019, and then it was going to start in April of 2019. And then everything that I wanted to do in that program and everything I thought it was going to be became, well, slightly irrelevant in the wake of things that have shifted in my perspective while I was, quote unquote, out with a medical event. And now I've reimagined what it's going to be. This is the Podcast Envy VIP Circle, and I am inviting you to join. The VIP Circle is for you if you have a podcast and you want it to matter, you want to make a difference in the world, and you need some social support. You could be at any stage with your podcast. It could be new. You could be a year in. You could be 3 or 4 years in. Heck, I don't know. You could be like 5 to 10 years in and been podcasting longer than I have, but you just want some support, some camaraderie, and a new, fresh perspective. The VIP Circle is going to be launching in May 2019. This is the last time I'm going to put this off. If it does not happen in May, it is not going to happen. So right now, I want you to go to thecreativeimposter.com/VIP Circle. Again, that's thecreativeimposter.com/VIP Circle. And you will get all the details of how you can join. You will have access to a monthly chat with me about whatever topics are on your mind. You will have access to exclusive audio from me on special topics that I will not share here on Podcast Envy because they're diving a little bit deeper. They're a little more specific into the how-tos of social impact and content strategy, into how to use your tools to make the biggest statement, like voice training, like tech tips, like what to do with burnout. Gasp, not burnout. Yep, what to do. Like community building, like email lists, like how else to build an ecosystem for your show outside of your actual show. Once again, this is happening at the Podcast Envy VIP Circle. You can find it at thecreativeimposter.com/VIP circle. Linked, of course, in the show notes for this episode. All right, that's it. That's my rant. Don't get distracted. Stay focused. Do what you do best, and then stay open and curious about how you can do it even better. I believe in you. Podcast Envy is produced by your podcast boss, Andrea Klunder. That's me. The Podcast Envy theme music is by Valentin Sosnitsky, courtesy of the Free Sound Project at freesound.org, and our podcast Angel music is by Benjamin Mastropolito, also on freesound.org as Lemon Cream. All music is licensed under the Creative Commons. Our episodes are mixed by Edwin Ruiz, and hey, if you want your show to sound as good as ours, hire us. Put the magic audio mojo of the Creative Imposter Studios to work for you. Thanks so much for listening, and here's to making your podcast the envy of everyone else.